do want to cuss. I personally think that is fucking bullshit. What can I do for you? What can I do for you, dudes? This is the best produced podcast I've ever been in. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Valoranting. I'm WTFmoses, joined by Pansy and Vansilli. We have a fresh new intro this week, Pansy.
Ew.
My chair is.
It looks good. It looks. Your chair broke? God damn, are you okay? Do you want to swear again? I mean, you okay? I'm worried about you.
Made me laugh from the get-go. I hope I wasn't hot mic'd on that one.
How you doing? We're joined by Vansilli as well. How you doing?
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me. Last minute edition. I'm happy to be here.
Probably fell out of a plane.
At least my name starts with a V as well, so hopefully I could do him justice.
Thank you,
Good
Velly.
enough. It's you're gonna get, right?
we have a packed show today, ladies and gentlemen. We have lots going on. We have had a ton of esports content over the last couple of days. Multiple tournaments, multiple results. We've got some power rankings, which we'll talk about later. But the very first topic is going to be the most important one, which is skins. Let's talk about skins. We have dragon skins. Skins to talk about. And they are dragons, and they are controversial because they're expensive as all hell. So this is a first of all, very high quality skin. We cannot deny that this is a very well, it has its own trailer. It's got multiple different models. You can upgrade it. It has cool animations. It makes noises. Even the scope looks different. But it has been a hot topic in the Valorant community because it's also $100. Pansy, let's start with you. What do you think about these flary kind of over-the-top skin choices here?
Honestly, shout out to whoever made it. The art designer, whoever did that, actually had full freedom to do it, and they've gone on after something that I find quite cheeky, which I really like. The Dragon Lore being like the most renowned skin in Counter-Strike, and then making this, it's like, yeah, get fucked with your little kid doodles. So I mean, it's sick. I think it looks cool. It's not something I'm all that interested in, if I'm honest. I don't really like skins in this game. They look fine. It's not for me, but as a standalone concept, it's very well done. It's very well done.
There's just there's something in this thing, Vansilli, and I'll sort of cut you off, but
it's all good.
They said that we had to think long and hard about dragon anatomy, and then it says "you gross" next to it, which I'm glad they're aware of, because the question I've had is, how do you fire this gun? Anyway, go on with what you're going to say.
You tickle their toes. But no, actually, now that Lauren mentioned it, to have a dragon skin go straight up against a dragon lore, I never thought about that before. And I think that is fucking awesome to think about it that way, yeah. And when you look at the prices, look, you guys invited me 2 weeks ago, and we talked about skins, and we talked about pricing, and I said, it's the same price. It's similar prices to maybe Rainbow Six and stuff like that too, 15 US a skin. It's doable, you know? And then now, after I look at my wallet, and I spent Prime skins, I spent Dragon skins, I'm like, fuck, I don't want to know how much I spent. I don't want it to be like Steam that tells me how much I spent so far in keys or opening cases, to know how much money I spent in skins so far, because I'm just like, okay, well, I'm still missing a Ghost skin, I'm still missing a Sharer skin, and that's probably going to be the last two I buy. But they're starting to get pricey as a whole, but at least I get to support a good game.
Yeah, I mean, that's the real baseline, is that I don't think we will ever know how much it actually costs to make a game like Valorant, but it's not cheap. It is not cheap to make these AAA games. They have their own custom infrastructure. They've got all this other anti-cheat development. They've got a bunch of employees, and people are like, $100? I'm not going to spend that. Well, then don't, because there are other people that will. And that's what they're banking on when they make these crazy-ass skins, where you ambiguously operate a dragon that shoots bullets, and then you shove stuff back into it to more shittiness. Don't read too far into it, because it's a slippery slope, let me tell you.
And that's another thing too, though, because I bought the skins and I'm like, yo, this looks cool. But then when I pulled out my Vandal, it wasn't moving yet. So I had to spend Radiant points on it too, to be able to make it move and change colors and shit. I was like, fuck, man. It's starting to cost a lot.
It doesn't do
No,
the
man.
animation.
You need to upgrade the visual effects to a certain level so they could
DLC
actually
for the
like
skins.
yeah.
Okay, that's
exactly,
a little egregious.
Exactly.
That's maybe where
So-
I get off the train. I didn't realize that you
My
had to
Vandal's
upgrade
static,
it to get it to do the reload animation.
Yeah.
All right,
Well, no, the
that's
reload animation's
bullshit.
cool, but it's when the reload animation's fine. It's when you actually pull it out and like the dragon whirls. It doesn't do that for
Yeah.
my gun. It's just full out, like stay straight.
Okay,
So
so
that's
the reload animation is the same no matter what.
My dragon stays
Is that-
straight, not flaccid.
Oh, okay, got it. Well, no one wants a flaccid dragon, dude. I mean, it's something that everyone deals with on a daily basis out there. There's lots of people that have flaccid dragons, and it's a problem that not a lot of people want to talk about.
Yeah, true.
True, and as someone who's not interested in dragons at all, Moses, honestly, give me CG_draw_gun0. Give me that shit. I don't give a fuck.
Okay,
Like, get that shit off my screen.
Actually, yeah.
Like honestly, I don't care. Like, the one thing for me, do whatever you want as long as it's like client side and it's just this, thing that you can see. The problem becomes if they go beyond this and they start doing like super crazy skins for the characters, I worry it's a gateway drug. You know what I mean? Like the devil's lettuce. It opens that door and suddenly you're in train spotting. I hope they don't do too much crazy shit with the skins because again, as a commentator, some of these skins make it hard to know which fucking gun it is, let alone anything else. Like I'm saying, like,
True.
what the fuck is this shit? Like I know what it is.
That is very true.
UI, luckily. But it's just like, come easy now, guys. Let's not go too far down the rabbit hole here. Like we can keep it on this like fun middle ground, but from like a game design perspective, I don't want it to be, I don't want to be able to look, or I don't want to spectate a game and then I don't know who the fuck this Jet suddenly is, and she's got this brand new outfit and all this other shit. I'm like, it's again, it works in games like League of Legends. I think it's even a debatable point there for me personally. And other games, you change like some of the core concepts of being able to identify, the gun, the character, the agent, whatever it may be. But on the top of the dragon skin, honestly, it's a bit of fun. I don't mind it. Again, you don't have to buy it. It's no additional content really. It's an animated gun, so you can put the price however high you want. Like again, for me, it doesn't bother me that much because I'm not gonna buy it. You know what I mean? And it's not out of unboxing. It's not using gambling to entice it. It's literally like, hey, here's a price point. Buy it or don't. So
I don't
really mind it too much.
I don't. Yeah, I'm the same way. And I mean, I was memeing in the chat because there was actually a huge point of discussion in the Vitality Open. Anyway, was the price of the skins. But realistically, you have the Battle Pass option, and then you have like the Golden Boy Edition skins. Let's say because that guy buys everything. Or you can go out and buy yourself $100 bundle and then spend another $50 upgrading it or whatever it costs, all your rating points and what have you.
I'm so glad he never really got into Counter-Strike because like Valorant's like it's like your first time, right? You're like, oh cool, I get these shiny skins, sweet. And then Counter-Strike comes along and goes, well, maybe you can have them. Maybe at the price of a key, a box, and a lucky roll, you might get that one skin. But also, you could trade them in. Like Valve just went, all right, I'm gonna fuck all you guys up. Like I've literally spent thousands. I think it's like 5,000 to maybe 6 to 7, depending. I don't think I've actually checked recently. I'm up, which is good. But the fact I have to say that makes me feel like a sad old woman in Vegas with like a cigarette in my mouth and a like glass of rosé in the other, just like
penny slots, just sitting there. Yeah,
hours, dude, hours.
I got another coffee. I need another coffee.
It's the automated card.
What happened to
this? No man, that's a good one.
Yeah, man,
but then again, too, it's the. Sorry, Derek.
Right.
It's also the sound, right? Is a little bit off too when you're looking at playing that game too. It's like when I pulled out the operator too, it just started roaring, and sometimes you don't hear footsteps. The shot's a little bit loud too. That a lot of pros have been saying on Twitter as well. So yeah, but I think to Lauren's point, it's nice to have the skins, but once you actually get into competitive mode, it'll be nice to have the option to turn it off or to turn off any types of skins in general. Let's say they're going to start doing agent skins. Exactly. It'll be nice to turn it off to keep the competitive integrity, just like how we should turn off X-rays, right, Lauren?
Well, the thing you got to remember, guys, is that the other players don't see your skins. Only the observer does. So it might be hard for us, but for the other players, they actually don't see the skins on the character models or anything like that. So it's for them, it's going to be fine, and for your teammates and stuff like that. But for us, it's like Is he holding up? What is that? You know, it's one of those things.
Yeah.
But,
It happened to me.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I think if we look at integrity levels, like, there was this document leaked about, I think it was either Activision or someone along those lines, that essentially if you were in a lobby, you know, and you were starting out, you hadn't invested into any of the skins or any of the DLCs or any of the upgrades, because you can buy like whole guns in that are OP as shit. They would, I don't think it was ever implemented into game, but it was like a theoried piece they were working with, was you'd be incentivized if you lost to a player who had these kind of paid for weapons, you'd be incentivized to go and buy it yourself. So they were kind of fumbling around with the idea of how they'd set up their matchmaking to allow for that to happen, that you'd get shit on by someone with these sort of, you know, higher unlocked guns, and then you'd go out and want to buy them yourself. So I mean, if you talk about like kind of the, it was a Call of Duty at one point. It was like they did a theory piece on it, I'm pretty sure. I know exactly. It's like as soon as you say Activision, you're like, yeah, no, that's
yeah, of course
fair.
they did. Yeah,
that's normal.
I don't think it ever came through to being implemented, or they denied it was ever implemented. But the point is that, again, if we go down the morality standpoint of how far this shit can go, right, it's okay for now. They're okay for now. They're sitting fine with the little dragon skin. I don't mind. I mean, you know, it gets real seedy the deeper you go down that route.
Yeah. I mean, Activision is like the gatekeeper down in like the seventh circle of hell, just like, give me your soul. And then it's or your parents' credit card. Or your parents' credit card. You know, it's a damn dirty business, these skins. But you know what? It's a free to play game. You got to make your money where it is. But we have more to talk about outside of dragons and dragon accessories. We have roster moves, and there are many of them. First of all, over the last couple of days and through the last couple of weeks, we've seen many big orgs jumping into the scene. But even in the last 2 days, we've seen two big ones. Well, one big one and one very heavily, probably maybe one. The first one is Envy.
Yeah.
Shout out to Vansilli for calling it. They did sign up. The last time I'm going to say they did sign up Twat. Together We Are Terrific has become Envy. So rest in peace, Twat. I'll never see you again. Let's see. I'm glad we no longer have to dance around it. But a special congratulations, especially to guys like Mummy, who was in one of the very first competitions I watched on Lava Series, and he was a standout then. He's been a standout since. And it's kind of crazy how so many of these teams have the middling to almost top tier Counter-Strike guy as the cog that brings the team together. In this case, it's FNS.
Yep.
And it's a good team. They've been performing. It's Envy's coming in, and they're picking up a lot of players that don't have a ton of individual star talent. So that's kind of along the lines of what we've seen from a lot of these teams, where they kind of get the one guy that has a lot of experience, and then maybe one or two potential star players that they could either keep or potentially distribute later on for untold amounts of money. So thoughts on the pickup here, Pansy?
I'm really happy to see them picked up. They were a great little team in North America. I think to me, when I was watching them pretty recently, they were kind of I'd say the dark horse almost, or maybe like a danger pick in a way. They were a little bit unpredictable, a little bit hard to work against, not necessarily to the same degree as like a TSM, for example, but in a similar aspect, very puggy, very aggressive, very individual, but they also did have that structure to fall back on. And they were really fun to watch. And, you know, off the top of your head, you don't put them in with like the Sentinels, TSM, whomever, Gen G. But then you watch them a couple of times, and they're the ones who are taking maps off people in the semifinals, pushing further and further. You know, they're getting more and more dangerous. So really good roster pick up there. I think that's a really solid choice.
Absolutely. Vansilli, thoughts on Together We Are Terrific?
Yeah, for me at least, for Twat, I get to say it now finally. I'm so happy. I did it by mistake over the weekend, but now I could say it one more time. But I'm super happy for them as well. I think when they lost Dapper, that went over to the Sentinels. Adding Caboose to the roster definitely helped a lot too. I think when you're looking at every North American tournament that has happened so far in Valorant, everybody's always asking that question: "We're going to get picked up. When are you going to get picked up?" And Envy for me kind of like fell off ever since they got away from their power horse French CSGO team. And then I know they're trying to put a CSGO team together in North America with a mix of like Nifty in them, and it doesn't really work out. But I like the fact that they're supporting now these up and coming teams, these rosters that's been sticking around for a while, and they've been putting up a mark. Yeah, they're not always going to be the number 3, 2, 4 team in the tournaments. They could finish 5 and 6 there, but they have potential to still remain in the top 10. And I like that support that they're
Absolutely.
going to get.
Absolutely. So yeah, I think we've seen enough from them to know that they're a solid contender in the North American scene. I don't quite think they're ready to break into the top 5 just yet, but we'll see how things progress now that they have the resources
Yep.
and the time available to practice as a pro team, which is the number one thing you get when you sign to an org. Let's talk about Fish 123 and Scream, who reportedly over the weekend have, or at least in late stages, according to Jacob Wolf, Team Liquid has signed them. Okay. This is ESPN's Jacob Wolf and Finn on Fire reporting that they have signed the team. So it's not, at least according to these two gentlemen, it is not a maybe, but it is a done deal. So we'll operate as if that is most likely the case. What do we think of this team, especially coming into Team Liquid, arguably one of the biggest organizations in the world, at least top 3 in my opinion?
For me, I think it's an excellent choice. I'm glad to see that Fish 123 potentially has found a home, if this does get confirmed, of course.
Right.
Let's say it's true for now. I think that's what we'll go for. It's really solid. It's a really solid pickup. I want to see how well they're doing. There was talks of Fnatic being involved, I think, at one point, but that may be just because I know Eccles used to be on the Fnatic. Is it Academy or Junior?
Something like that.
One of those two. So he was, there was a discussion there at some point, but again, there was a couple of other now Valorant players like Lucka, Meadow, Alex, who were also around that. So they're very well experienced around each other. But yeah, speaking of this roster though, Fish 123, obviously they kind of fell apart. Ice Paper Hands, Artist, the man himself. There was he fell away from the roster, obviously joined with Mixwell and looked towards G2. And they needed some firepower, and there's no better person to fulfill that role than someone like Scream. So it's an excellent pickup. I think people have yet to see the best of Scream. Obviously, they've got to see the Pug, the Mix, the, bashing through Twitch rivals sort of deal, but it's going to be excellent to see how well they do as a team, as a collective. They've got very good pedigree. They've got, great experience with Scream. They've got Sliggy as well, still involved, potentially coaching them as well. So they've got a lot in the way that makes them be a very attractive roster to pick up.
Vansilli, there is, I guess the second factor here, and this comes in as more of a, we've been seeing this repeatedly, and we talked about this with Envy, with the hub of these teams being comprised of superstar level players. And Finn on Fire also talked about earlier, at least in a tweet earlier this week, about how it seems that most organizations in Europe are hesitant to pick up teams unless they have at least one superstar level player that they can build around. And Fish 123 fits that mold with the addition of Scream. Do you think that that's the case here as well?
I think so too. I mean, Scream has always been like one of the top names that was talked about in the CSGO scene. They know him for his one taps pretty much, right? And when I'm looking at, I actually saw the announcement on Twitter earlier on by Nell, and then I'm like, if it's Nell's French, he's in that scene, he's probably close to Scream, it's probably accurate. And to build somebody or to build a roster around such heavy firepower as Scream, I think it's the right thing to do. The thing is, though, for me, is that I haven't had a chance to see Scream into Valorant yet. So it's going to be a nice one. I think they're playing in the upcoming WePlay, which is going to be nice to follow the European scene and see how Scream is going to mesh with that team, because losing Artist was a big one. And when I was watching or listening to the European scene, or listening to podcasts and the rumors and listening to you guys, the only two things that I hear a lot that Lauren talks about is Rob Wiz and Fish 123. So I'm looking forward to Fish 123 getting picked up by a big organization like Team Liquid, and hopefully they could do big things with that too and represent that well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just want to highlight that.
Go ahead.
Just really quickly off the back of that, I got the pleasure of seeing Scream early on in the kind of Twitch rivals, the invitationals, but in every essence, and every now and then, you definitely see Scream and Fish 123 playing together. There's already going to be clips out there of it. The man is nuts on it. Like he's actually I personally would put him within easily the top 5 individuals. Mixwell's up there, Artist is up there, Scream is up there. I don't think, if you're looking at firepower alone, pound for pound, individual player, you're going to get much better than him. I want to see how well he adapts to maybe some of the new metas or new agents. Because again, when I first watched him, he was more playing just a Sage, kind of just that, I need to heal myself, then I can go get my one taps. But he was phenomenal. I mean, absolutely incredible to watch play. So do make sure you grab a little bit of a view on him, see how well he's kind of melding and meshing with the Fish 123 roster there.
I also look at Sliggy as a coach as a factor. We had an opportunity to talk to him, and we also had an opportunity to talk to Artis, who had nothing but love in his heart for Sliggy, who said that the guy works super hard. And you also have to look at, and we talked about this during the interview at the end of the Vitality Open series, is he basically said that these guys are all playing just to get along right now, just to be able to maintain their aspirations because they're not being paid. So with a team like Fish 123, with the resources of Liquid, the addition of Scream, the coaching of Sliggy, these are guys that will likely take maybe a little bit while to get back into the top discussion for Europe, but have a tremendous amount of talent. And it's always nice to see a couple of UK folks getting some shine in the esports scene. I know there's not too many of them out there. But as far as the addition of Scream, my long-term concern for a player that is so rooted in CS is how he adapts to the game changing, because CS is a game that doesn't really change all that much. So as metas continue to develop, as agent abilities change, synergies, that kind of thing, does a player like Scream, the old school aim god, does he have the ability to adapt? Because right now we're in this CS dominated kind of period in Valorant, where if you can aim and you can shoot better than anybody else, you are going to be successful. But as we've seen early on, at least with some of the dev showcases and that kind of thing, it's really going to be about execute, synergy, agent meshing, and that kind of stuff. So hopefully these CS guys have the ability to learn these new things, and ultimately they're all mostly still young as well, Lauren. So I think that'll be expected.
I think the one thing for me is, right, and I hate to say it because it's such a cliche, but he is the exception to the rule. When someone's that talented in that role and you've picked him up into a team, you build around that, right? You shouldn't expect him to change what he's phenomenal at. You want to capitalize and frame it, because he is, again, the exception to the rule. You don't apply this to every player. You know, you don't allow someone the amount of freedom that you'd allow someone like Scream. If they can't do what he can, you wouldn't be so willing to pick up potentially a one-trick pony if that one trick wasn't outstanding. So I think Fish 123, they're not stupid. They should be well aware of what they're doing here. And it can work. It can be incredibly viable if they know that, okay, we're not picking up a utility player here. We've already got that. We've got our 4 main players to kind of be the pillars, and then just set him up. You know what I mean? Set him up to make those plays, kind of, let him off every once in a while and let him run Rampage. I don't think you can expect a player to Scream to sit there and have to learn certain aspects of the game that just simply wouldn't complement his play style. You want to try and find that middle ground potentially. If not, set him up into a good position where he can kind of fulfill the role that he needs to, but also still capitalize on what makes him that impeccable player. Again, exception to the rule, this doesn't apply for every shit player in the world. It's Scream. You know what I mean? Like, there's a reason that he is as good as he is.
And the scene is still young, and we've seen and will continue to see that as new players like the Simples of the world are still in their little SpongeBob t-shirts, first getting into Valorant. There's a lot of young guys who are going to be pure Valorant players, which we don't really have yet. Most everyone who's playing Valorant has come from somewhere else. So as time goes on, I think that the natural progression of things we'll see the CS style eventually become adapted and changed overall. But let's move on. We have more roster stuff to talk about. NIP as well has completed their roster. Let's take a look at that. This one is a little bit more of a question mark for me. So this is the addition of, so they had Lucker and Rhyme as the initial 2 guys coming on, and they've added Fearoth, if you will, Hip, and Creative, or Creative B, if you will, for their whole roster. They picked up the 3 Frenchmen to go along with their other 2 signees. And this one is interesting because Lucker had a great performance in the Vitality series. He was playing quite well, but Prodigy, which was Lucker and Rhyme plus Aura, Turco, and someone else,
Lucker, Rhyme, Hip, Pora, and Turco.
Hip, right? Yeah, the guy that's actually on the team now. So Hip did not have a good series he had moments, but he was not consistent. He's a good player. I understand he's quite well liked in the scene. He's got a lot of credit to his name. But in his last tournament, he was not at the top level, at least for as far as stats were concerned. Now, it's a one-off tournament. You can't write a guy off on one tournament. But the major factor for Prodigy's rise to second place in the tournament was Aura. The guy was playing out of his mind. He was almost MVP caliber for the entire tournament. He was averaging something crazy like 22 or 23 frags a game. and really carried Prodigy in a lot of situations where guys like Hip and sometimes Rhyme were not performing at the top level. Now you have to have time to practice together. You need to be able to gel as a team. And I imagine now that Nip has the resources and the time and the space to practice, just like all the other guys we've been talking about, that the team will improve. But this one is, they're going to need to prove it to me personally, because I didn't see a ton out of Prodigy that wasn't on the back of just big performances from guys like Lucker and Pora, who's now Pora not on the team. He might end up on a team like Fnatic, who at least according to the chat, shout out to Darkoplax, I believe, who said that Fnatic is eyeing an entire Turkish team, which would be interesting because of some of the Turkish talent we've seen out there. So what are your thoughts on Nip, Lauren? I know you had some nice things to say about Hip, but what are your thoughts on this squad?
Overall, it's actually pretty solid. Korea, I managed to watch. I think he was playing for like Team Luti or something weird in like a Twitch Rivals. And Korea's been outstanding as an Omen to me in Europe. He's been a bit of a highlight player. So even if he's, you haven't seen him recently, make sure you just check in on him whenever he's playing that Omen. He's very, very solid on it. Laka, again, the wonderful thing to me is that if you take away the surface level of already how intertwined the Valorant scene is, you go back to Fnatic Academy where you had, Eccles, you also had Lucker as well. So you've got some of these kind of players really interchanging and being very, very aware of each other as well. So I think it's a really good roster. You've got to give it time though. I mean, how long did we allow, for example, the Sentinels to come together, or X, Y, and Z? How long for Skadoodle to fit into the roster? I want to give the same sort of credit to the EU teams, even though they look a little bit more. I don't want to say competitive. That's a weird way of phrasing it. They put together this roster for a big purpose. It's you can see it's been made for this. So I want to see how well they do, but I want to give them time to gel together, find their roles again, see if they fit in properly. Because keep in mind, as much as a lot of the orgs are picking up star power everywhere, influencers, streamers, the issue becomes is fulfilling a full roster. You don't need 5 huge fraggers. You need really good kind of melding ability within a roster. You need kind of necessary, not necessarily just support players, but players that can influence plays that you don't necessarily see, or people who gel really well behind the scenes. It's a lot that goes into a team that I think people are still missing out on from like the general public who don't necessarily understand the dynamics of a high-end team. So I'm curious to see how these rosters work together. I want to see who fulfills that role. Because the problem is I see like some of these teams picking up these kind of, 5-man, full superstar rosters. Okay, well, who's going to be the support player? Who's going to be, in these positions that aren't going to be what they're used to? Who's going to be kind of now put down a peg or two and then having to swallow their ego a little bit? For me, someone like this Hip roster, this LIP roster could be pretty interesting to watch. I think they've got some pretty big potential, honestly. I think they're the team out there that's got a great deal to prove at this point. So I want to see how well they apply it in the upcoming tournament. I think that's going to be quite a telling sign. During the honeymoon period where everything should be looking good, how far can they take it?
Absolutely. And Vansilli, do you have any concerns, any thoughts about this roster? I mean, Lauren kind of nailed it. All these guys are now going to have the resources and the time to practice, and Sentinels is a great example of what happens when you have that time and space. They've been climbing, they've been improving a lot. You think the same is going to be the case here for Nip?
No, I definitely echo Lauren's sentiments too, because when you're looking at Hip, he was known into like the Overwatch scene as well. So bringing in 2 French players could bring into that synergy. And when Lauren mentioned, Creative maybe did well in Twitch Rivals or whatnot, when you're looking at, for example, FaZe when he actually played in a T1 Nursery Gamer Showdown, and he actually had the captain Corey come in and do the interview, he's like, well, I kind of picked up Marv into this game because he looked good into Twitch Rivals. I picked up Sam because he's good at fragging. Death brings a different in-game leader's perspective from his CSGO scene, his knowledge into that as well. Maybe some of these players bring that's what's missing as well for this core team to actually gel out as a good team overall. So I think aside from what Laura was saying, that's the only thing I wanted to add. But when you're looking at the 2 other Turkish players, yes, indeed, I was looking at the Spike, and Fnatic has their eyes set on CNED. And then you're looking at how many Turkish players have actually played in the Vitality tournament over the weekend. It's actually awesome to see so much Turkish representation that knowing them, aside from CSGO with like Zentaris and Calix that went over to a North American scene, they stuck around for a while with nothing but Turkish rosters. So I think for them, they'd love to stick together as a team. So maybe with Pora and Turco stepping out, it gives them the advantage to come out with 5 players that could speak Turkish, and still dominate the European scene. So big merhaba and nasılsın to all the Turkish players out there. I love what I'm seeing.
Absolutely. I'm excited to see like if you have a full Turkish roster as well. I mean, the Turkish esports fans are rabid. Let's say.
Huge,
They're very
actually.
excited about all stuff esports, and to have a full Turkish roster, especially with some of the talent that we've seen, like of Apora, CNED, Turco. You know, name your roster. I think that would be arguably a very scary team. We have one more question mark in the roster moves department, and that is, what is G2 going to do with their last spot? David P had a great tournament. He was able to help his team on the way as a stand-in to victory. And there has been a lot of, and especially for myself and some of the people that were watching the tournament, that there's been a big public push to say David P is the guy. Let's fit him in. But in the post-game interview, we did have a chat with Artis about the fact that David P performed quite well, and he was not, he was definitely respectful of David and said that he did a great job. But they are still going to be trialing people on an ongoing basis. So the G2 roster spot is still up for grabs. Scream obviously seems like he's off the docket now. He'll be going likely to Liquid. So who out there, aside from David P, do you think is a potential fit on this G2 roster? Lauren.
What are they? So I guess what David P, I think, is a Sage main, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. He's an attack stage. He's up in the grill, pushing you in the middle.
Solid. I mean, the thing with David P is I've been a big fan of seeing this guy do really well for himself since the early stages. I think anyone who watched, not necessarily just like tier 1 Counter-Strike, but maybe a couple of smaller tournaments in that regard, would be pretty well versed with who David P is. I just wonder how he melds with the roster, or what honestly G2 are looking for in that additional player. Because they've got obviously the double AWP presence. They've are they looking for another a more IGL role? Are they looking for more of a support role, more of a it depends what they're looking for, and from the outside in, it's very hard to tell because there's still such a new roster as this core 4, let's say. It's hard to see, okay, well, what are you looking for here as your fifth element? What do you need? What does Patty Tech do for you? What does he bring to that roster? How's Pitt's role filling in on this one? So until we can fully grasp every individual's role, it's gonna be super hard to figure out. I think it's strange they hadn't picked up David P by this point, if I'm honest. I thought he would already have been in the roster if that was exactly what they're looking for. Around the same time as that Patty Tech sort of time where they were joining in, Artis obviously was going to be put on a bit of a shelf to make sure obviously all those allegations were dealt with and handled, which they were. So that's good to see him out there. But again, it's a little bit curious that they haven't locked him in yet. Maybe he doesn't fulfill that role perfectly, but if he doesn't, what are you looking for? So to me, again, I think it's more trying to find out what they're missing and what they're looking for in that fifth player. Or potentially, is there a contract holdup? Is there other issues? I don't know. It's a very unique scenario.
And I don't really know what G2 style is. I mean, I spent the weekend watching them after not really being I was kind of disconnected from the European scene, so I was really excited to watch them play. Yeah. Obviously, they have a ton of talent, absolute ton of talent when it comes to Artis and Mixwell flying around the map. Artis on the op, obviously Mixwell on the jet. Also opping or Artis rifling. It doesn't matter. They can hurt you in so many different ways. And then to have some random Sage pushing your B doors on Haven or something like that, trying to fly out and get these exit these entry frags on defense, no less, is incredible to watch. But there were times where it bit them in the ass a little bit when David P would go down in an awkward way, and that eliminates the ice wall, or the radiant wall. The slow, the res, the heal. If you have an attack stage or a battle stage that's out there risking herself to get those frags to discombobulate the enemy team, you're potentially losing on that as well. So maybe that's a style change that they might have to incorporate, or that might be a general concern with the playstyle and how it fits into what G2 is trying to become. But based on the fact that Mixwell and Artis are just so talented, especially Mixwell is a disruptive player on his own, G2 might just be that type of team that is always in your face, trying to make you, second guess your strategy, interrupting your executes, stepping up and popping your raise when she's getting ready to throw her paint shell, that kind of stuff. We saw a lot of interesting tactics from G2, but they're so head and shoulders above everybody else right now that there's no real need to be concerned about style. So I wonder if that's something they just put aside for right now and then say, you know what, David P, what better audition than to go out and win an Ignition Series tournament that is fully qualified. I don't think you're going to find a harder situation right now until maybe the next tournament, which is going to be WePlay. So I hope for David P, considering he's in the same spot as a lot of the Fish 1, 2, 3 guys were, where he needs the resources that a team provides, and I hope G2 is the team to do it. So let's
Can we
talk
just say I'm
now.
super happy to see Moses has drunk a glass of the EU hype juice. So welcome on board, buddy.
Well, yeah, I didn't see him. I mean, that's the thing. Like, I didn't get a chance to watch,
right?
but
It's
I will say that G2 plays very similar to North American teams. They are all over the place.
I mean, yes and no. I could already dive into the NA meta compared to EU meta, but to keep it brief,
off heavy.
I think that for now, real quick, G2 are allowed to get away with it because they have literally picked up the best talent there is, full stop. But I have also seen them go to deeper approaches. And even Mixwell is hyper aware of that and already saying that, you know, eventually we need to learn more of a strategic approach. Right now we're very puggy. And that might be an element to the David P hold up. Maybe they need a little bit more structure there potentially. Again, could be a discussion point. Hey, I wanted existence in that roster, you know, give them that level-headedness. But again, for now, it's that awareness, whereas the rest of the NA scene has gone, yes, TSM, T1, they're the golden standard, let's aim for it. So I think we might see a change up in that, but for now, it's a pretty good time in Europe. It's good to see.
Absolutely, and I think that now Derek, with the resources together, go ahead. Of course, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, and just to add a bit onto the G2 as well with DVP, I mean, he played very well. He's played so many events already with Mixwell too, but as a Sage main, when I was casting the Trovo Challenge over, I think 2 weekends ago with Ryan Central, with the men, he was, I was starting to see compositions that had a lot less Sages too. So maybe that's another thing too. It's not only about the playstyle and everything too, but it's also agent composition. So if David P doesn't play a different agent that can mesh well with what they need in terms of playing stageless comps in different maps, because apparently Bind is so popular in Europe versus us in North America. Yeah. It seems like it's Haven or even Ascent these days, but Bind being European play, we're seeing less Sage in that too. We're seeing more Reyna as well. Is that going to be the deciding factor too as to why David P can find his home? And if he can't find his home within G2, at least he's proven it well enough in all the other events that he's played and all the other events that he's won here with Mixwell, that he could definitely be a good factor for somebody that wants to play more a basic composition or a Sage composition, pretty much.
My only concern is that if G2 doesn't pick him up, where does he go? You know, that's if I'm David P, it's kind of you're in a tough spot. Like, you have this good resume, but we've already seen, and we've been hanging on this topic a little while, but I mean, it's an interesting there's not a lot of seats out there, not a lot of paid seats anyway. I'm sure you could find another team to play with, no problem, but I mean, he's not going to be making any cash. So anyway, things to consider. But that's enough about what happened with the roster moves. Let's talk about what's coming next, upcoming tournaments. The big one, at least for me, is definitely going to be PAX. I mean, not biased because I'm hosting it or anything like that, and Lauren because she's casting it. But we are going to have a 4-day event. It's a $25,000 prize pool, and some of the confirmed teams, I think, at least from what I've seen, are teams like T1 finally, and I imagine we're going to see the whole roster. TSM's going to play in it because they play in everything. Cloud9, maybe they'll have an actual team to field this time around. It's going to be a very, very competitive tournament and a very important one for the North American scene. So let's talk a little bit about it, Pansy. What's exciting you about PAX Arena?
I think it's just extension of storyline. After the results come in of, Cloud9 delivering, TSM dropping down a little early, NA scene is getting a little bit of a shakeup here. So I think this could be a really big, decisive point. Again, okay, was that a one-off anomaly we just saw in the, just past tournaments? Or are Cloud9 really on the map now? Have they actually been able to sort some of those issues out? Where is TSM in this? Where is T1 in this? The Sentinels on the upswing. It's going to be an answer to a lot of these questions that have started to occur through the last events. I think this will be the big one that goes, okay, we've got a couple of answers there. I don't love seeing influencer teams, if I'm honest. It's probably why, to me, the WePlay tournament will be more exciting to almost watch because it's a little bit more gritty. It's definitely going to be the hardest tournament I think there's going to be. But the PAX tournament will at least be an answer finder. For at least North America for now. It can still change in the future. But I think we'll be able to walk away with a couple more answers to some of our questions after the recent couple of interesting results coming out of NA.
I don't know if I agree on the influencer stuff. I know we had this conversation before. I'm not sure if it was on the show or not, but influencers are like the rocket boosters. I think they come out if you get a ninja, if you get a whoever, they're gonna retweet that they're playing in it. They're gonna post about it on all their socials. They're gonna get the traffic going, and they're gonna get annihilated in groups by the pro player. That's what's gonna happen. So I don't think it's a huge deal to have influencer teams involved, especially when it's like a 20+ team tournament. If you've got 24 teams and 4 of them are influencers, who gives a shit? It's gonna be fine. They're gonna get lit out in groups, or maybe not. Maybe we have a cool storyline where, you know, and for God's sakes, for the viewership, maybe we have, you know, the Team Ninja with some talented players, by the way. And I say Ninja all the time as a lightning rod. He's got Lex, Morgaus, Sunny, and Vansilli,
Grego and Ninja.
Guy. Grego and Ninja, yes. So I mean,
they're gonna get shit on. I love them.
Absolutely,
no.
Absolutely. I mean, but
that's
it's
like someone who's a tier 3 sub. That's someone's tier 3 sub. You know, I love Lex. He's my favorite. I love Lex. He's actually wonderful. I watch him play Quake all the time. He's the only person playing, right? Like, legit, I actually love watching him play. Like, this is no shade to them. They're not on the same level as these guys. There's a big disparity. But yes, it is a spectacle. But the problem is, I think it should be treated as almost a show match. But then, would Ninja want to like get to be dumpstered in a show match? Probably not.
No.
I think if it's a big enough tournament, if there's at least a open avenue of approach for some of the upcoming teams. So one problem I'm seeing in NA is, especially, it's a lot of invitationals. It's a lot of, here's that same 10, maybe 15 teams at most that you're seeing.
Yep.
And then the open qualifiers, the smaller tournaments, you're not getting any eyes on it, right? So I'd like to see at least some open slots. Just maybe 1 or 2. If you want to keep your 2 influencer teams, give 2 open slots. And I know it's not as exciting, but for the goodness of the scene, for that growth, to see, okay, well, what's out there outside of the 10 teams we know of, that would be perfect. Perfect balance. Even if it's just 1 invitational, just for the fucking optics of it, absolutely fine. But I just want NA to be careful to not go too heavy on the influencer side, because then by the time it switches into an esports element, a little bit more competitive, people just won't give a fuck. There won't be that structure there anymore. You know what I mean? So I really want to make sure they get it right.
Like Fortnite's the example, really. Like, they have a bunch of pro players, but it was really driven by the influencers, and that's once an influencer moves on, and you kind of lose that. Like, oh, maybe Myth isn't technically a pro player now. He's an influencer, whereas at the beginning he was both, and you got to be both. It was same thing happened to PUBG. Now, Battle Royale is not a great example, but in this particular environment, with it's the Ignition series, it's the first thing. There's no real infrastructure. Vansilli, I understand why they're including them, but it really seems like they're an addition rather than the main show.
Yeah. Well, when I think about it, I do agree in some sense, because you guys are talking about storylines and stuff like that too. And I think one good thing about it is that when you're looking at invitational teams that we have so far, so we have 5 teams announced so far, right? So T1, Genji, Prospects, Echo 8, and this 100B lifted influencer team. So Echo 8, they were noticed basically when they qualified from the First Light qualifier going into the First Light tournament of the Immortals. Prospects, they've been picked up or invited in certain North American team or events, and they turn some heads. The good storyline, at least, by bringing influencers in, is that, okay, so the teams that were considered tier 2, tier 3, or up-and-comers, are these guys going to be able to go against an influencer team that's kind of here for the fun of it? And don't get me wrong, I'm totally against the fact that, as well as always inviting influencer teams. I love the format of the open qualifiers. I mean, I come from CS in 1.6 when everybody had to qualify in CPL in 2003 to make it to the top 16, and like fighting that for like 3 days definitely showed that you were the best team in the world.
Can we keep our references at least from 2010 on there, Dad? Are we talking about CPL qualifiers?
In 2010, I wasn't relevant anymore. So
okay. I'm just trying to get the references like within the last 15 years.
Yeah, well, sorry, man. It's been a while. It's been a while. But
qualifiers.
So just to get on that, it's nice that storyline, if you have influencer teams that could spank these tier 2, tier 3s, and up-and-coming teams, then it shows for the North American scene, okay, it's as established as we thought it was, where it was, okay, the top 10 teams that we think are the best are actually the best, and then the other ones that are up-and-comers, well, you have to fight back in the open qualifiers. That way, I hope we're going to have more as well.
I hope so too. Let's talk about qualifiers. Let's talk about WePlay, the gulag of open qualifiers, where, as far as I understand, these poor like we have these invited teams
How
which are have a
big
couple
is it?
question marks here. So it's a that's a long ass tournament too. It's 6 days. It's a 6-day
Yeah.
tournament.
Hold
I
on, I wanna
imagine
see
most
the
of it is
structure. I
them
wanna see
whipping the
this.
poor qualified teams while they row the WePlay boat towards the death island of qualifying. So fish 1 2 3 is liquid
Oh,
essentially.
that's
Yeah.
Or potentially. So I mean,
This is
so
nice.
Prodigy is actually Nip, which is strange a little bit because I'm not sure who's going to be on Prodigy's team. Party Parrots had a not a great showing in my opinion. At least they did make it to the playoffs. They had some moments, but they didn't really have the hype that I was expecting. Considering Lauren was all over them prior to this weekend's tournament. Forza, I don't know who's on that team. I think that's just that's a CIS briefcase full of cash invite, and then two qualified teams who I believe have to come from a 256 team single elimination rake yourself over the coals qualifier. So it's pretty rough.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
it's hard out there. Oh god,
I mean,
yeah.
what do we
I
have
don't
any-
envy
I'm not
that. I'm
particularly-
looking at it.
I don't like who's on
Oof.
Forza. Need more DM qualified as
So-
well. So shout out to those guys. They
Yeah,
are
I
a
was
good
just
team as
looking
well.
at them.
So.
Yeah, they're Hungarian,
and-
I think. They're from Hungary.
Yeah, that's right. And when you're looking at it, props to at least the European scene. Yes, it's a qualifier, but everybody wants to be a part of it. And that's like I said, sometimes you got to sweat, bloodshed, and tears to actually get into this 8-team invitational, I guess, going into the WePlay tournament and to fight through 256 teams. That's awesome. Trovo Challenge had pretty much the same thing too. When they had the qualifiers going on into the brackets, 250 European teams signed up as well. So first off, props to the amount of teams that exists in Europe. Second of all, the hype that's around Valorant for Europe is fucking amazing, and I love to see that.
They just need
because
places to
North
play.
America only had halfway in Trovo. Sorry?
They just need places to play. They have these like little cash cups and stuff like that, but I wish we had the infrastructure that, obviously has come over the 20 years plus of Counter-Strike, like FPL and that kind of stuff, so that you could see and get more high quality practice and maybe get some stream traction, all that kind of stuff. Because a lot of these teams are living and dying in the dark, where we'll never hear or see any of these guys, likely, at least in the current environment, considering that they're trying to qualify for 2 spots and there's 250 teams. That's living and dying on like one potential qualifier, and then maybe you have to break up and that kind of stuff. So they're it's like what is it, World War Z, where it's just like a zombie wall climbing up trying to get into the freaking. It's like whoever gets like the 1 or 2 guys to get over. That's the kind of qualifier situation in Europe right now.
I think at least it opens up the eyes
WePlay
for events to make leagues and stuff like that too. I think it opens up a lot of eyes. It should open up a lot of eyes to support that European scene for that type of cups. And in North America, we have the CLG Blitz Cups, we have the Nursery Gamers monthlies that happen, we have the Pittsburgh Night monthlies that happen as well. So if they have that much traction in Europe, somebody should be able to pick that up and start farming or building up these academy teams or whatnot for these future organizations too. Because one day when this team or this game is going to be fully established, and then where these pro players are going to play like every single week, some of them are going to burn out like Astralis. You're going to have to start bringing some new blood in, and let's start cultivating these aspiring pros. And the other thing too is when you're looking at, there's a second qualifier that's happening or that should happen soon, right, for that 8th spot. Big shout out here to Ryan Central that tweeted it out too. You're looking at the teams that are still not in this tournament yet. Fabricant, Bonk, Nolpenki, started from CS, and probably a couple of guys that from the European scene that there's only 1 spot available for these. So when you're talking about having to fight and play your best from beginning to the end, I still like that format, even though 3 of the teams might not make it out of the 4 that are favored to move forward.
I'm a little surprised that no Planky and some of the others and Fabricant and some of these other teams weren't potentially on the invitation or invited personally. I'd say, as you said, like Forza's a bit weird. Even Prodigy to a degree. Just
it's half the team.
It's no disrespect to the team. It's it's a little weird. You know what I mean? If I was picking my big European tournament, who are my influencers? Who are my invites? I wouldn't have instantly thought of them. Now, again, I would like to see how well they do. the one big thing about this tournament as well that I do not want to overlook here is the fact that it's all best of 3. Even the group stage in Swiss is best of 3 matches all the way through. That's why it's such a long tournament. And that's really so good because at the moment, I mean, I've been casting a hell of a lot of this, and I'm a bit sick and tired of best of 1s. Map pool is super important, and people exactly. It's like people I don't think realize how important and how varied map pool is. I think people just go, "Are you a good team or not? Are you dropping 40 kills? Are you 10s?" And that's all they see. I think it's a very like base level like hot take, but it's also because we don't have analysis desks, we don't have those big storylines. People also don't fully understand the concepts of what makes a very good player or what makes a good team. They just see frags. And I think at least in a best of 3, we should start seeing teams as sort of map pools, stylistically what like appeals to them, because we can make assumptions off of what they veto when it's coming down to like those weird invitational tournaments that don't mean much. But at least in the best of 3, hopefully it has a good veto format. Hopefully we get to see some kind of good approaches. What maps, suit these teams stylistically? Is it more strategic? Is it more, they depend on like a good T-side bias, their attack side bias before someone lynches me? Just, those sort of like differences that can really build character to a team. You know what I mean? Like that stuff is really exciting to me. And it may be a bit of an echo from Counter-Strike, sure. But I think understanding what a team does and their personality is a big point of building these teams up, right? Like North America to me right now is everyone's just hyped by like sick individual plays, which is cool. But in Europe, we need to develop the whole idea of, okay, well, when Astralis first came to the scene, you loved watching their T-sides. Super choreographed, super well made, well handled, your thinking's man team with that little bit of, firepower thrown in for that individual brilliance. And then you'd have, FaZe, the complete polar end of it, super puggy, super powerful. You've got those fraggers who need to pop off and have those good days. You have, let's say old school Na'Vi, late in the day executions, 20 seconds and less, they'd be hitting the site, super quiet, brilliant utility usage, right? It's like stuff like that builds character and builds like a lot of interest in these teams, and people then get behind it. So seeing good formats around a tournament allows that to begin. So I want whoever casts these, please pay attention to it.
I hope so too. And the European the European Open that we just saw was all best of 3 as well. So it was best of 3 in the winners bracket, up the way into the grand finals, which was best of 5 with a map advantage to G2, and the lower bracket was best of 3 as well. So we had the opportunity to see more of these guys, which I think is important, and ultimately competitive. Like more games is more opportunity to see more of the players you're interested in. So it's always good to have more of that type of stuff. But there's also the style and the idea of the Ignition series is ultimately to see what works and to see what's best for the scene as a whole, both balancing competitive integrity as well as watchability. So Vansilli, do you think we're at a point now where we're kind of at that balance, or do you think that there's still some changes to be made?
I think when we're looking at the overtime changes that were added recently, I think that could be a good one in terms of competitive integrity. I'm not sure if it's necessarily the best formula yet, but at least knowing that it's not decided on sudden death like Rainbow Six was a year or two ago, I think it adds a bit more, because some teams seem to be more comfortable just playing defender-sided, even though we always have these debates that one map is more attacker-sided or more defender-decided. Seems teams just likes to play defense as they're more comfortable in that. So I think that adds a good thing. In terms of as a spectator, there is still a long way to go. I think Lauren's probably going to touch on this too, but I'm not a fan of the X-ray. I only like the fact that it was at least a dot. The dot actually minimizes and has a good balance of each. But being able to see X-ray where fans are going to be like, oh my God, why didn't you see that kill? How didn't you see that kill? Sometimes the guy's just fucking walking. And if you're actually playing in the guy's shoes, he doesn't need to look at that angle because he thought the action and the rotation was going to be on the other side. So it kind of pulls away from how you think a player is good or not based on that. Look at that. It's like, oh my God, how did he miss that shot? The guy's just around the corner. Like, fuck that shit, right? So I kind of like the fact that if you want to put it on, I think Prius and Sapphire do an excellent job with CSGO where they they turn off X-ray, they turn on X-ray when the action's about to happen, where you know the enemies are coming from. Then they turn it off so that you actually get into the point of view of the player and figure out how they actually play the game and how mechanically skilled they are. So that's one thing. The other thing too is as a caster, we talked about skins before, right? I had a hard time differentiating one time between a Phantom and a Spectre skin because their Prime skin looks so much alike. I think that if on the bottom right corner, you know, when you switch weapons, the overlay pops up for the weapons. Keep that on at least for the spectators. I think they're still missing a lot of little things and tweaks for an experience as a spectator. But as the game itself, I think it's pretty good the way it is right now. For now.
I think so too. I mean, the spectating and I'm not I wasn't a huge CS viewer, so I'm not as impassioned on the outlines as you guys are. But I do understand that there needs to be balance, and the same thing is said of all things when it comes to, you know, the viewership experience versus competitive integrity. Because ultimately, the reason why esports is where it is right now is because people are actually turning up to watch it, and you need to keep that stuff in mind, and providing more context and, for love of God, some better observing tools, as well as just, you know, better UI. I mean, this is all stuff that Riot's working on. We know that this stuff is going to improve.
Definitely.
There's an interesting discussion happening around this topic right now in the chat, which is mostly around like how things are advertised and how the community is a little bit split. Do you guys think that it would be dangerous for the broader discussion of Valorant to not be divided into Valorant competitive and Valorant, just this regular Valorant? Do you think that they should be kind of kept together in the same pen, or should they be divided, Pansy?
Keep it together. I mean, the biggest way to create a community is to kind of create the ladder, in my mind, or the, you know, whatever you want to call it, of, you know, you're a grassroots player, you enjoy your content, you watch your favorite streamer, you know, whoever it is, and that's it. That's the world you live in. You have fun with your friends, but then maybe you'll occasionally watch a game. So you have that kind of like scalable access to it, right? If you divide the two, you'll never understand how good this game can get, or you'll only see the very top end and not actually understand the broader community. They should work hand in hand, and I'm going to be honest, right? Let's call it what it is. I think Riot are going to take their time before they push this, and I'm not worried about Riot at all. They have everything in the right place to do it. People forget the whole drop situation, right? So how did you get keys in the first place? You had to watch a stream. You had to connect your account and watch it. What do you think they're going to fucking do for their first big tournament? You know you're going to get in-game drops, and you know what that means? A shitload of viewers, a shitload of eyes on it, and it's going to be perfectly fine. Riot aren't stupid. They don't need to worry about viewership right now, if I'm honest. They are perfectly fine. I think people are seeing this from more of a community standpoint, and I think the community needs to kind of get the fuck away from the competitive and traditional divide. That's such bullshit. Just fucking enjoy the game. You don't have to be good at it. Just enjoy the fucking game. You know, like, what the hell is this divide about? You know, I see people being, like, reported for spam. I see people... And you know what the worst thing is? Like, if I see one more shit clip of their favorite streamer doing something mediocre, but they ignore the context of, let's say, Brax up against someone nutty doing it. And Brax is a bad example because he always gets to the front page of Reddit. But you know what I mean? Like, it's like they'll sit there and fucking jerk off over some, like, tier 20, like, favorite streamer of their own doing fuck all interesting against a team that never, like, checked them, never used utility against them. Like, look at this 5K my favorite streamer did. He even said my name when I subbed. It's like, fuck that shit off. I don't care. I don't care about it. Like, it's shit. Like, stop that shit. It's idolizing the wrong shit, man. You know what I mean? Like, I get it. You can enjoy your favorite streamer, but let's not fucking polarize this. But the problem is, it's not over time. It's already divided. Look at PUBG. You have competitive PUBG and traditional PUBG subreddit. And that's a horrible game to watch.
Yes,
it was
but
already
also
divided.
the game. Okay, if we're gonna talk about PUBG, Pansy, you're gonna get me fired up here, okay? Because that game is nowhere near the same competitively as it is for matchmaking. Okay, it's barely the same. Valorant, you're playing the same game as the pros are. That's the big deal about Valorant, which is why I was about to agree with you until you drug me out here to talk about PUBG. Okay, but I'm with you, Pansy. It should be together because the top of the top is going to be the pros. You're not gonna influencers do not have the time to get as good as the pros do. It's been a big complaint with people playing in Twitch rivals and stuff like that when influencers are getting dumpstered by pro players, and ultimately
I don't want esports players in my game.
Exactly. So Reddit is an unfortunate evil that we all have to deal with on a daily basis, but it is an important forum where people go to find information. And if it's constantly being weeded out of the main Valorant subreddit, you're never going to find the stuff because the Valorant competitive Reddit is run like ass. Anyway, let's talk about on that happy note, let's talk about the MSPaint. Let's talk about the MSPaint contest we're running right now.
Get some crayons
which
out.
is let's get the coloring books out. The freaking lunatics are going bananas again. We're running this thing. Are you the smartest person on your team? Do you deserve rating? Does no one else understand your genius? Prove it here with your MSPaint Agent contest. With our MSPaint Agent contest, I should say. Follow the directions below and make sure you post your masterpiece by July 20th. Follow Do Not Peek. Use hashtag Valoranting. Post your MSPaint with agents and their abilities, and you could potentially win a $100 Amazon gift card. And second place is also a $50 Amazon gift card. If you can beat Veli's creation of I Am Root with the treesies on there, you're gonna get yourself a nice gift card. And can you show mine, please? Thank you. There we go. That's the real masterpiece. I don't know how Veli's won. Look. You can see his little belly and stuff like that. And then we also have Lawrence, who's I would say mediocre in context, but even in this one,
I had to take it
third place.
I got told off for taking it too I was messing around too much. Then I had to kind of take it seriously.
You took it way too seriously.
Is that a Ben 10 watch?
You missed the medium mark.
It almost was. I did realize I kind of created Ben 10 at the end of it. I was like, oh, okay.
That's a good one.
All right, we're gonna take a little break. We have what's that? Did you do one, Vansilli? Did you?
No, I said I'm gonna have to make one too now. No, not yet.
You absolutely have to
think about it.
You're now contractually obligated to make one. When we come back, we're going to be going deep on the Pulse Invitational Vitality Open, and I have my very first round of power rankings, which may have an oversight that you will probably be upset about. We're going to be back in just a couple of minutes. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We are now looking at the Pulse Invitational. We're going to jump into the esports deep dive that we often do in the second half of the show. And the first one on the docket is the Pulse Invitational, which saw Genji Esports taking the overall victory. But there was a lot of interesting shakeups here. Let's take a look at the groups to see who was participating. So we had basically all the who's who, save for one team that is noticeably absent. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. So TSM, Immortals, Genji, Sentinels, Cloud, Tens, 9, and Laz. Well, yeah. And then I guess Together We Are Terrific. Who else is on here? Echo 8, Code 7. There, it's pretty good. It was pretty solid.
Pretty much all there.
Yeah. But we can skip right to the playoffs part because that's where all the real action was happening. The big one here for me was kind of the shakeup, and I'm going to let Vansilli talk about it. I was casting / hosting rather the Vitality Open while this was ongoing. So tell us, Vansilli, what are your takeaways from this tournament? What should we be talking about?
Yeah, so first off, when you guys looked at the teams and the groups, you guys didn't notice FaZe and 100 Thieves. FaZe basically couldn't get a roster, unfortunately, confirmed for that one since the T1 showdown. And then 100 Thieves, they had the guys actually move over to LA for that weekend, so they couldn't participate.
Also, T1 didn't play.
Also, T1 didn't play. A form of it came through was T1 Academy, where actually the good thing, before I get into the brackets, was actually the groups. So in the groups, T1 Academy actually beat Sentinels 13-12 in sudden death overtime. So that was a nice big upset. Another one that Lauren would like is that Code 7 went 3-0 in their groups. But then, unfortunately, when they got into the brackets, they got spanked there by Envy quite easily. So biggest takeaways is Sentinels versus Immortals went to a series of 2 out of 3 where Sentinels won, but both of them went down to the wire 13-12 in both of those maps. Cloud9, of course, is the biggest story. Actually beating TSM over the quarterfinals. They actually spanked TSM 13-1 on Ascent on that first map. That was their map choice. That was actually their go-to, which was actually nice to see. And the story around that was basically Mitch stepping up, getting a lot of multi-kills, but also Tens, of course. Tens changing the meta of playing the Jet. So many times I saw him with the Judge and actually getting a lot of kills too. That kind of toppled TSM, especially that final round where they got eliminated. You just saw Tens walking towards an Omen dark cover with a Judge. I call it the Judge Jetty. So he's walking with the Judge inside the smoke. You're like, okay, well, this is pretty much game over. He gets 3 kills. That's it. So they get knocked off. And of course, Genji winning that one, the whole tournament, is another big one too, because a lot of people were saying, oh, Genji, they're actually not that good because they got 8th place in T1 Showdown. They got lucky on the other ones. But getting to first place, 8th place when they had to play such big teams into T1 Showdown, and also winning this one now, it kind of solidifies at least that they're in the top 5, top 3. But then again, after all of these upsets and these shakeups, what is really our top 3 now? And I think PAX coming in 2 weeks is going to be a good sense of where we're heading to. Sorry, in North America.
I just want to kind of echo that as well. The big standout to me there, kind of coming into this, was the Sentinels. You know, I was holding them to a very high standard, and they weren't getting those initial results. This is going back maybe a month now.
Yeah.
The T1 Nursery Gamers, they finished 5th to 6th. They're, prior to that, it's always been kind of these middling results. But then they played in the Games for Equality, a bit of a show match style thing. Nothing too serious, but you had such big takeaways that they had made huge leap and bound improvements, and then them picking up a good 3rd place. I mean, their loss to Gen G was a pretty respectable one, bear in mind. That was not a bad 2-1 result, mostly getting towards double digits, losing out in close games, 13-12, 13-10. They weren't stomps. So it's really good to see that Sentinels are very much on the board and very much looking good, because, we were holding them to a very high standard for a very valid reason. Yeah. And we're starting to see some of those big potential moments coming through now for them, and showing the prowess of some of these players. And honestly, I really didn't think I'd be, on board with the hype of this team, but we're really seeing it come through now.
It's linear improvement, is what I've noticed mostly from Sentinels. Like, if you're calling it from the Liquipedia results, they were going out in quarterfinals or in groups or whatever. Like, they were going out early, so 5th to 6th, 7th, 8th, that kind of stuff. And now they come off the back of a competitive show match, and then now get 3rd in this invitational, and really only losing out to the eventual winners, which were Gen G in, I believe, semifinals. So that nets them the 3rd result. But ultimately, Gen G, this was a very important victory for this team, who I think was kind of going the other way after some wins. They were kind of faltering just a little bit here and there, and I'm not going to try and say that they were on a loss streak or anything like that. But after some high profile wins, they didn't really have a great showing in T1. I can't remember what they placed at the T1.
Yeah, it was T1. They were 7th to 8th.
Yeah, exactly. So that one was kind of a bummer for them, as that was a fairly big tournament. But to turn around and then win this thing is going to be really nice for this squad. We're just kind of looking at general highlights right here, and ultimately Cloud9 and Tens and whatnot is great. I think there is now a very bitter taste in TSM's mouth, having lost to essentially Tens and his judge. I didn't get to watch it, but my understanding was that they just did not have an answer on Ascent. Losing 13-1 to a non-complete team, if your TSM is just like not luck of the draw, but just it's one of you just not the day. It wasn't the day for TSM.
I do want to highlight though. For sure. I know everyone's like hyping this judge play. Okay, so roll your minds back to one of the first episodes we did when you guys had Sliggy on. He was already theorizing the judge is going to be incredibly powerful, incredibly good. And I think anyone who understands map design and how many choke points there are in this game, even after those 50-50 angles were removed, understands the judge can be super, super powerful in the right scenario. And considering the economy that Tens runs with, you either have an operator or you just don't. I don't often see him sitting middling on a rifle. He likes to go either all in or not, right? It's like the man can play around with that, and he's on a jet, so you can even get closer. You can close the gap substantially quicker on a jet. So it works very well. And of course, let's then keep in mind, if you aren't using, let's say, a judge or potentially an operator, well, you've got your ultimate, hopefully. So, you've got a very big toolkit coming in on jet now that can actually be very, very viable in the correct hands. So for me, again, this is one of those situations where I think it was theorized. It's really good coming to see the proof being in the pudding. We've seen a couple of the players kind of toying with the idea of it for sure. And I think it's if anything to me, it's just a really good proving point that, the theories are coming true and you can see it being put into practice against good teams. Not just, again, these kind of middling teams. No, these are top tier teams that are falling foul to some really nicely well-made ideas.
No, I have a little game I want to play with you guys real quick. Sorry, what was that?
All right, I'm ready. I was gonna say real quick, because you're looking at jet as well with Tens. If it's not an operator with tight corridors where it actually
you want to be up in
is
the
an
face.
advantage for him, yeah, you got the corners with the judge, so that's another good one. And another weapon that's been used a lot too by Sinatra, the Odin. So yeah, I thought the Odin was only going to be used on Ascent, but he also used it on Haven. So that's the
first spamming,
another interesting
spamming doors on mid. Yeah, no, that's something we see from B window all the time. Okay, I'm gonna
play
a little game. Hold on. No.
Okay.
No, this time. No. Okay, because it's topical and I don't want to move on yet. Okay, so I'm gonna give you some results. Okay, really quick. 3rd, 4th, 9th, 12th, 1st, 9th, 12th, 2nd, 9th, 12th, 5th, 6th, and 2nd. Who am I talking about right now? Player.
Player. Oof.
Player.
First. Repeat the first the latest.
Okay, from the
results?
bottom. This is starting way back in April. Okay, 3rd, 4th,
Okay.
9th, 12th, 1st, 9th, 12th, 2nd, 9th, 12th, 5th, 6th, and then 2nd. Who am I talking about?
Who finished second?
I wonder if the chat can get it. Can the chat figure it out? The
Wait,
chat figured it out.
Second
Cloud9.
in this tournament.
It's tens.
Is it tens?
It's tens.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
there you go. This had to be Cloud9.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is like the microcosm of C9. It's like he's like Carmelo Anthony. Either he's carrying you to victory or shooting you out of the game. There's no way. There's no between. There's no one or the other. He's either winning the game for you or he's losing the game for you. And not the tens is losing the game, but like if he's not at like maximum tens, if he's not 10s out of 10s, he's you know, they're not winning. So it's they need a team. There's nothing to take away from this victory for Cloud9 over TSM because it was just like 10's got you one time. That's it. See you next time.
That's
it.
true. That's true.
Now,
I think,
now you can say what you want.
but I mean, but this is going to be just on that topic that you know just brought in. I think that's going to be a scenario for a lot of these teams when you build rosters around individuals. If that individual doesn't play well, you're going to have a bad time, and that breeds inconsistency, and it's going to breed a very unpredictable scene, which is what I think NA is going to end up with substantially. I think EU's got a little bit of that syndrome for sure, but we'll see if it does come out to the same extent. But yeah, the one thing I did want to highlight, especially with the Odin coming in, I want to just say in regards to that, I think if it becomes more popular, if more people realize how annoying that gun can be, and with a distinct lack of heavy aim punch in a way, or kind of how you can't get back in on the fight because of the aim punch. So once you're hit with that, your chance of fighting back into it because of aim punch is very, very minimal. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out in the meta. I mean, he's been playing this for a while. That stupid little scribble on the wall is just where he lives. So it's become. I think it's going to become a bit of a. I don't think it'll be a problem. I think it's going to be an issue that people are going to have to try and work out, maybe with some tweaks towards aim punch. Because as I said, once you've been hit with it, you don't get to shoot back, right? Like it's going to be interesting to see how people feel about it, especially with the spam through walls. It's, as I said, I want to see how they see it, if it becomes more of an issue, if it becomes more of a point to be looked at. I think Sinatra's one of those players who's going to potentially change some of the patch notes coming up in the future. He seems to be able to find things that are very unique and dirty.
He plays
to play with. The
Overwatch. He had to relearn the game every week.
Yeah,
poor guy.
No, again, you can tell it though. You can tell that he's very ingenious in the way he plays, and I think that's a big compliment to the Sentinels. And I love what he does. I think watching him play has been extremely good fun. I was very surprised by that. You know, I'm a Counter-Strike purist at the bottom of it. You know what I mean? Like it's why I enjoy seeing these weird things, but then I also get that weird feeling of like, is this right? I don't know, but it is good fun. But I think, as I said, Riot probably should keep a close eye on him because he's going to find the things that are OP and he's going to make them work. So it's going to be good.
I was going to start singing.
Yeah, I know the song exactly.
Is your heart telling you no, but your body's telling you yes, or what?
Sometimes.
Is that when it comes to Sinatra? You know what? Yeah, exactly, absolutely. And you know what? It's like that. You could have like the three things that like, you want to trigger us when it comes to FPS games: Bloom, aim punch, and X-ray abilities. Those are the three things that I'm tired of.
Oh, dude.
You know.
Also, just real quick, like, can we just say? Joe, I'm going to be worried about. I'm worried that Riot, rather than kind of polishing the spec client in a proper way, banged in X-ray. I'm a little worried because it's going to appease the plebs.
It's slapping the hood of their observer client. This bitch has got so much X-ray in it.
Exactly. No, it fucks me off because I'm worried that people are going to get complacent, and I you know, Vansilli touched on it earlier, and I think it's going to come down to, God, I really hope these TOs keep employing the right observers, otherwise we're going to be in for a shit show of constant X-ray being on. It's just laziness, and there's some incredibly diligent, well-written articles, and every single observer who has done this for a while will tell you why X-ray is lazy and it ruins that kind of immediate experience. I worry that this was their first response. just the caliber in which they've added it. If you know, if you wanted to
How did we get back to this
a nice
topic
new
again?
feature around the kill feed, because it pisses me off because it's where it changes, right? Right?
Did we not talk about this like the last 3 shows about
We
X-ray?
can talk about this forever, man. You're with 2 people
No,
that fucking hate
you don't
X-rays.
understand.
It's like
Hey,
5
can you
degrees of
imagine that-
conversation away from X-ray chat.
Dude, in tournament play in Counter-Strike, at some point you have people cheering when
know, we
your
talked about
crosshairs
this
close
already.
to me. Okay.
I'm not
No,
trying to
fuck
shut
it.
you down.
No.
It's
Moses, shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. You know nothing about this. You casted what, PUBG and hosted some Valorant shows?
and we saw
You haven't
X-ray
seen-
24 hours a day. I listen.
And-
You
No,
just
man.
simply adopted the X-ray, okay? I was born in it. I was raised and molded by the X-ray. We talked about PUBG observing an X-ray since day number 1, Pansy. You think I'm not on the field out there like the soldiers? Okay, I'm telling you to turn X-ray off too. I agree with you. We can't keep talking about this. It's not under our
Yes, we can.
control.
Until they change it. Until they change it, I
Yeah,
will consistently moan about it.
Somebody's gonna
Alright,
listen
do you
to
know
us
why
someday.
You're lucky? Because so far, you've probably mostly worked with good observers, or maybe, you know, you had one tournament where they left it on a bit much. But the problem is, it ruins so much of the excitement. You go back, watch 1.6 frag moves, and you wonder why that always seems so much better when you watched it. It's because you didn't fucking see it coming. Imagine there's a punchline to a joke, and then it's just written underneath, and you're like, haha, exciting. Like an ending of a movie, but you just see it kind of like 10 minutes before it happens. Like, it ruins the whole point. The whole
Write your
point
congressman.
of it.
Right, your congressman.
So
Fucking
I don't have
Just
control over
one-
this.
Kickoff.
Just one curveball out of that, though. I actually do watch stand-up comedy with subtitles, and I still find it funny. Maybe that's
No.
just me, though. I'm a
No,
smiley guy.
dude.
What's wrong with you, dude? What is
No.
wrong with you?
I don't know, man.
the
Maybe it's
fuck?
just a crowd
How-
reaction that
what
makes
is
me
it?
laugh.
Okay, I'm glad we have this now to point our ire to, because that is horrible. You're robbing
Yeah, there's
yourself.
something wrong there.
I don't know. I watch everything with subtitles. Sometimes I just don't understand words. I don't know. I have
Okay,
to read it.
let's take the X-ray discussion to the next
Okay.
tournament at the very least. If we're gonna be carrying it around like a briefcase, let's take a look here. The Vitality
Hate it.
Vitality Open. The Vitality Open was also a high level tournament through the weekend. G2 did win it in relatively convincing fashion over Prodigy, who took second place. A little bit of an asterisk as to Prodigy. They were playing with actually we'll say half of NIP's roster. Hip, Lucker, and Rhyme were all playing for Prodigy in addition to Turco and Pora. Another asterisk, 2 asterisks now for Prodigy, is that second place came on the back of what was a legendary performance from Pora, who again, I believe I mentioned this earlier, averaged something like 22 or 23 frags a game through the entire tournament. And a special shout out to Fabricant and Party Parrots and everybody else who didn't make it out of groups at the bottom there. Fabricant had some moments. They did take a map off of G2, which I think is the closest G2 came to losing until they took a round off of from Prodigy as well. So it was very interesting to watch. G2, especially with their style and just the way they played, there was no real concern ever in this tournament for them, Pansy. So let's talk a little bit about G2 as a performing team. It's not a complete roster, but let's just imagine for now that all our dreams come true. David P gets signed. Is there anyone anywhere near them in Europe right now?
I think there will be eventually. I don't think, as it stands, I think they've probably got the most. There's a fire burning underneath them, right? They've just been picked up by one of the first big orgs to take a shot on this. They're very fired up. Artist definitely has a lot to prove now. He's got a lot of naysayers, even though he's a phenomenal player. There's no reason for that.
Tremendous.
I mean, the thing is, if you've got one of the best rosters there are, you gotta deliver on it. And this is the first time we got to really see them playing as a complete roster in that regard. So it was their big showing, and they put on a good show at that. So I think down the line, Fish123 definitely. I think Party Parrots definitely. I think potentially Fabricant. There's a couple of other teams out there who can 100% push these guys. But it's one tournament, and they had the biggest fire burning underneath them, and they had a lot to prove. So it's good to see them walking away in that regard. I think their play style will work very well when they have that, necessity to play, when they want to be confident, when they want to be playing out like that. They have that very bounce off the back of it. So I think, for me, this is a good tournament for them to kind of make a showcase of what they can potentially do.
Another thing we actually didn't talk about when it comes to rosters is actually Vitality themselves. I mean, Vitality is likely put this tournament on to take a real hard look at a lot of these guys.
Yeah.
So hopefully Vitality is another organization that jumps in. They have one of the best Counter-Strike teams in the world right now. So maybe they're not actually capable of affording another team at that level, but the Lord knows they're paying a lot of cash for their current roster. But anyway, I hope that we see Vitality come in as well, because it was a really great tournament. I think I might be jumping ahead, but can we see the Mixwell tweet? Because I think this is really kind of sums up the feelings that this tournament provided him, which is essentially him telling everyone to fuck off, that they're the best team in Europe. So they won basically he said, like, everyone called them influencers. They won Ignition and it wasn't a real tournament. And now they finally won a fully qualified tournament. They don't see anyone talking any more shit. So shout out to Mixwell being able to ram some criticism back down the throats of some of those knuckleheads out on Twitter. But Mixwell was a big part of their victory. Artist was huge as well. David P was there. Really, I don't think that there's a more skilled team out there right now than G2 as far as pure firepower on the roster. And it's going to be up to the rest of Europe now to catch up to them. What do you think is going to be the first steps, Vansilli, for Europe to even try and put this together? Is it going to be like just going balls to the wall and spending on a huge team? Or is it going to be just practice and trying to find weaknesses in this shit, whatever you want to call that? Mixwell flying around the map, acing you with his judge or op or knife ult.
I think for me, the biggest debate now is it Europe or North America that's going to be the top team, because you're talking about how G2 is a little bit puggy the way that TSM plays it, and TSM is very puggy and they're number one. But then I do like the fact that what Mixwell tweeted, and as soon as he won the Vitality tournament, he came on to watch the Pulse Invitational Finals too and started critiquing every single move that was happening in North America. That's dumb. Why did he do that? He should have done that instead.
Classic EU,
so,
classic EU right
so
there.
He's living and breathing Valorant, and I'm looking forward to see a clash between North America and Europe, where who knows who really is going to be our number one right now. So far, TSM, but with the recent results, who knows? But to see that, are they going to be able to beat G2? I'm looking forward to that one. Like, fucking, let's stop this COVID right now. Stay home, wear your fucking masks, and let's fucking get tournaments going as soon as fucking possible, so we could watch the North American and European clashes, maybe even Japan, Korea, whoever. Right? Like, I'm looking forward for this, man. I'm so hyped for this game.
I don't know what's gonna happen. Like, I don't think that we're gonna allow any North American Valorant or otherwise anywhere. At
least US.
Like, if you're flying out of the US, you're just like, we're gonna put you in a little bubble boy. We're gonna wrap you up.
Maybe that's
why
Gen G signed up a Canadian roster instead.
Yeah, no doubt.
Look, okay, we do like 2 games. One's in the UK, one's in like East Coast of America. We play just back and forth for a little bit.
We'll have to do it on a cruise ship, like they did, like the Olympic NBA players. Do it in international waters. So we'll fly them out to a ship. Yeah. We'll live there for 3 weeks. Over top of one of the Google Fiber connects. So they just have like a line down into the deep ocean that just connects right into the internet. There you go. It's a cheap option, Riot. You can hire me for your event planning if you need it. So G2 is the best. In my opinion, in Europe right now. I don't think there's too much argument to be made there. No. And I'm still, you know what, I think this is a smooth transition. Let's talk about my power rankings, okay? This is the first time I've done power rankings, and I definitely didn't forget anything. Let's talk about it. Let's take a look at it. This is my power rankings. You can freak out if you want to, okay? Maybe you're thinking someone's missing from this list, but here's the reality. TSM, they are still number one in my opinion. They did lose to Cloud9, but Cloud9's not a real team yet. And it was one map essentially that kept them out of the semifinals, which would likely have seen them move a little bit further than they did, dropping out in the quarters in the Pulse Invitational. But they did beat T1 in the Nerd Street Gamers Invitational. They've been playing in everything else and winning a lot of stuff as well. Gen G was waffling a little bit, but they did secure that victory, so that put them second, in my opinion. Sentinels has shown continued improvement. Immortals has not shown me continued improvement. It's been a little bit up and down for that squad. They are 4th, and Cloud9 is 5th. Now, arguably, you might want to say, well, geez, where's T1 at? Why isn't T1 on this list? Well, T1 doesn't play tournaments. Okay, they don't. If you go on if you don't go on, if you go on. Okay, hold on a second here. I'm doing this again just for you. I'm gonna go to the 100th Use Invitational, which I believe T1 was in, and I'm gonna go ahead and click on Brax. Okay, the last time. Okay. As a tournament, or actually, we'll just do T1 as a team here. They played in one tournament as a team, and it was the T1 Nerd Street Gamer Showdown where they took 2nd place. Other than that, Brax played in, as you know, he's the first guy there. He played in the original all show matches, and the original T1 Nerd Street Gamers Invitational. Everything else has been show matches, Twitch Rivals, random invitationals, that kind of thing. They were not qualified, and it was early days, and most of them happened in April. Okay, so they've only had 3 showings. Once at the beginning of May, once in the beginning of June, which was Twitch Rivals, and the end of June, which was the T1 Nursery Gamers event. I cannot let you on the power rankings if you are not playing the game, T1. I want to see you out there. Let Skadoodle out. Ska Daddy, the Ska father. Let him out, dude. Take the Ferraris out for a while.
I mean, if they're playing in like most of the top end stuff, or like, well, they played in what, the Ignition series, and they came second. So I think you have to heavier weight that result. And I think for me, the inconsistency of Cloud9 drops them out and puts T1 in their place. That's what I'd say. I mean,
can
yes,
agree
we
with
are
that.
seeing more
I
of
can agree with
Cloud9. I think it's fair to kind of put some credit towards Cloud9's current standings. But for T1, I mean, yeah, all right. Like, I get it, but they okay. I mean, fuck off. Like, the point is, like, what we had, the 100 Thieves Invitational, we did have the NRG and Friends tournament, we had the T1 Invitational Code Green Invitational, ESPN Esports
Those were in April.
Like, so what?
That was the game had been out for 2 weeks at that time. It was in closed beta.
And then what, they played, their last one officially was the, let's say, the Nerd Street, showdown, and they came second. I mean, we can't discredit it. We can't discredit it completely.
They lost 3-0
I think
to
it takes
TSM.
place of Cloud9.
Didn't take a map off them.
You want to say, sorry, how did Cloud9
Not
do?
a single map.
How have their results been?
That's why they're,
how
that's why they're
how
fifth.
they're looking out there.
At least they're showing up, arguably. Well, at least 2 of them are. I can agree with I can agree with swapping out. I can agree with swapping out T1 and Cloud9, but people are out there trying to tell you that T1 is one of the best teams out there. You can't say that because you never see them.
No, I agree.
And just to add one more thing to that, because yes, they didn't play into the Pulse because it was only 10K. They're gonna play into the PAX because it's 25K, and then or 20K, whatever it is, and then they play one that was at least 15. But the thing is after PAX, if T1 makes it into the top 4, I don't think that should change any type of rankings either too, because T1, as you're not participating in all of these tournaments as other teams, for example, then they get invited. What do they do during this time? They watch VODs. They watch the teams play. They study the teams, and sometimes they counter-strike at the same time too. So that result, yes, we'll bring them up.
I'm doing the same thing. I don't have to play Valorant. I'm watching the VODs. I'm watching the tournaments. I'm keeping up. Can I be on T1 too? There you go.
Be the coach,
they have a coach. What's the? I mean, this is the issue. Is like, are they trying to keep the mileage low? Like, they're not collectibles. Okay, take them outside. Let the rain hit them a little bit. See how it goes. They paid. Let's be clear. Top dollar for these players. Like top of the top dollar. You're not getting Skadoodle out of essentially retirement. And Brax is as a streamer. Brax had arguably the most improved. You would think Brax would want to be playing in everything. He was on a shelf for the longest time, and now, like, what are the conditions need to be met? Do they only play in 68 degrees? Does the sun need to be in a certain part of the sky? Where are they? Like, why aren't they playing? I would love to know the reasoning.
The bigger question to me, right, is I actually don't care that much about these tournaments right now because most of them are invitationals. Like, in the nicest way, yes, we'll have to take a lot away from it because that's all we have. All I care about is if they're actually scrimming properly. That's literally all I care about. And it's the same for Europe. It's the same for a lot of these results. I honestly don't care too much about this yet because it's so early days. It's still fucking invitationals. What are you going to get away from it? Yeah, okay, 10, 20 grand is a lot if you put it in context, but let's kind of just scrap that for a second. If they aren't playing scrims, because I know a little bit more about EU than NA when it comes to scrims, so I don't know too much about that regard, then there's a fucking problem. Then you've picked up a team that's not working. Yeah, that's it. It doesn't matter if you watch the VODs or not, you got to work. So if they are scrimming a lot, if they are in the prac channels, then you're good. Then I don't mind.
It's safe to say that they are scrimming and practicing too, because I've been hearing that they've been playing a lot with the T1 Academy. So they scrim each other a lot too, which is why you probably saw such a good showing from the T1 Academy team being able to beat Sentinels 13-12 on a sudden death overtime. So I think from that aspect, you're actually pushing both of these teams up more. But also, of course, they're going to be scrimming all the other top teams as well in the custom matches that they put together. So I know the practice is there, but as a fan's perspective, when it comes down to practicing what you're doing as scrims, and of course what you're going to show in the tournament is going to be slightly different, slightly modified. Of course, you don't want to show your whole hand, right? So again, if they're doing well in the PAX, I'm still going to put an asterisk or a star on that one as well, because I want to see them play more, which we don't have a chance right now. because I don't know why they
I
don't
also
want
think
to.
we have to consider how much work goes into theory crafting. If they're trying to change their
Yes.
approach, let's say they don't want to stay as this puggy team, they need to scrim and then review and then try and implement to that. It takes a long time. I know it sucks, but if you're looking at a team perspective, for them, again, short term, yeah, missing out on, let's say they missed out on 3 or 4 big tournaments. But let's say they come back in soon, and the next big ones, and they look better, they look more well-rounded, because I think we all started to see that there were flaws. They were playing the TSM style, but without the kind of final punch to it. It was quite fast and loose.
Without the practice,
I think
it seemed like.
Well, yes and no. So again, as long as there's a reason, I don't mind it. If they're sitting there and practicing, they're trying to refine their style, they're trying to find a little bit more flow to it, trying to find the right in-game voices, trying to find the right IGL, the sort of leadership there, then it's okay. And again, yes, I know it sucks for, the fans out there who want to see this team, but you'd rather see them doing well than stagnating and not doing well. Because, I mean, look at Sentinels. We were questioning where they were for a little bit. They took a couple of time out from the tournaments. It looked like it's not, been in the forefront. They've come back recently and look super strong in comparison. So as long as they are working towards a goal, I'm happy. Pardon?
I think Sentinels has actually been out there playing though. Yeah, they played in the Pulse Invitational.
They have, but they skipped a couple of tournaments.
Yeah, T1 Nerd Street Gamers.
Gamers for Equality doesn't count either. Everybody was trolling that one.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, but I mean, they've at least put themselves out there to be observed, if you know what I mean. Like they're out there playing in these tournaments that. Yeah, but I mean, when was the last time we've seen?
There. So
okay, it's better than one. It's 3 times better.
I know, but it's a comparison, my dude, and then you can see the results in comparison. But
you've also seen the marked improvement. We talked about that earlier, right? Like Sentinels has improved observably from the first time we saw them until now, and also the results of the stuff that maybe wasn't streamed or wasn't getting a lot of shine or wasn't A tier or B tier, whatever you want to call it. They were out there competing. I know that there were some of the stuff on Liquipedia is not representative of some of the stuff that they were playing in early on, where they were going out in group stages and stuff like that, because they were out there on the field practicing and figuring out their issues in front of people who could observe them. So in T1, I'm not out here trying to say that T1's a bad team. Okay, there's no way that I would ever say that, because of course they're skilled. They've got a great team. They got the great organization behind them. They've got all this stuff. But if it's important for T1 to play in this stuff, not only because it needs to be worth their time. What is worth your time as a competitor? If you're a competitive person, it doesn't matter if you're playing pickup in the gym or if you're playing in the grand finals of some tournament. You need to come with a competitive mindset and be out there trying to win. If you, in my opinion, are going to try and be the best team or be perceived as the best team, you need to be able to go at all comers in all arenas. And what is preventing them from doing so?
Yes,
that is my big sticking point. Is like, what is preventing them from playing in these tournaments? Is it the lost revenue from streaming? Is that the big deal?
No, I think that's super cynical and not the case. I think the fact is that we have to trust, actual professional players with actual coaches, actual, structure around them to give them the best scenario to succeed. I think us sitting here and the most achievement between us is me being a semi-pro in COD 4 at one point, potentially. Like, I got a free mouse pad.
Leaderboard season 1 through 4. Thank you very much. Solo North America.
I mean, I think again, like,
finalist Call of Duty 1, Lanny TS Montreal.
Very nice, very nice. Was it COD UO or COD 1? Like, what did you play there?
COD 1. COD 1.
COD 1. Not bad. I did like COD 1. But no, again, it's like I'm gonna put a little bit more, I guess, allowance on them knowing what's best for their team. And, if they come back stronger and they look better, brilliant. You know what I mean? That's all it is. If it doesn't, then I think a lot of people who question this roster at the start will probably have the proof in the pudding. Again, I think us saying, well, why aren't you playing in every tournament? When do they need to right now? Is it an obligation? Do they feel that they could make better practice out of sitting there and scrimming something specific over and over again? Again, in scrims, you could run a certain idea, till to death and see if it works, see what goes wrong with it, sit there, review, go into the next scrim and do the same again. Whereas in tournaments, you have to consistently play to win, right? Like, as much as, yes, the age-old, the best practice is an official. Yeah, I know I've said that myself as well. Like, it's a lovely line to say, but you can't run these ideas, right? You can't run and test them out and see how they feel, get that right synergy, see how they kind of, apply to it. So again, I'm going to put a little bit more faith in them knowing what's best for them and give them a little bit of room, because I was very harsh on the Sentinels in that regard. when they took a couple of tournaments off and we hadn't seen them for a while after some very bad results, and they came back even stronger. So I think we just have to wait and see. Again, it's so early in the life of this game as well.
Exactly,
you don't have to play in every single tournament.
I want it to be like Ferris Bueller's Buddy's Ferrari, like it's been sitting in this glass cage for so long. That's a really deep reference, only for white people, but I mean it's as far as the the notion that
I don't understand.
Skadoodle's not been streaming either. What's that? Have you never seen Ferris Bueller? You know the Ferrari
I don't
reference?
know you would say what the movie white people.
Okay, whatever. Okay. I wasn't saying it wasn't for you, okay? But
Yeah,
Ferris Bueller is like, it doesn't matter. The point is I want to see more of the team because it's exciting. It's exciting to watch them play. It's exciting to see them in competition. And if you're T1 and you've got this great roster, why? Why do you have them if we're never going to see them? Are they like, if you're biding your time and waiting and that kind of stuff, you want to play in the right stuff, you want to showcase the right way, it has to be worthwhile. Whatever the reason is, there is a good chance that I don't think you're going to get better practice. I don't think you're going to get better practice than tournaments. Like scrims are fine, but scrims are for practicing and experimenting. So you might be playing against a team that is not showing you everything. So how can you tout yourself as learning and grinding and being out there and improving to be the best if you're not playing against the best on a regular basis in a situation that necessitates you play at the top of your skill level?
I think I'm gonna be able to finalize it in two quick things, and I think we could agree on it. Is that first off, the game is still very new, only came out in beta in April, and the game really came out maybe in the last month, right? Tournaments are happening every week, every 2 weeks. That's another thing. And then the second one is with the announcement of the Ignition Series. I think the more that we're going to see Ignition Series in North America, the more that an organization like T1 most likely will want to participate versus other ones too. So I think give it another few months to the end of the year. I mean, we're almost at Christmas at this point. Fucking COVID. And at this point, we're probably going to see a lot of T1 at that point, right? So I think it's going to be, let's just be patient about it, but we're going to see a lot more T1 as soon as there's going to be more Ignition Series 2.
We're literally seeing them in the PAX arena, right? So
exactly, that's one, and that's already
so
one.
It's like, and that's a big one. So this should be a decent improvement point for them. Have they shown noted improvement? Have they been working on themselves? It's not like they've gone missing for 4 months. It's that they're there. They're just not playing as much as others. So I think to me, it's going to be a big telling point at the PAX Arena if they look better. They look more as a solid team. I think it's been proven that you can play the kind of I'm in my mind. I'm trying to think of good approaches. So in NA, I'd say like Gen G to me is a very structured team. The way they approach it, and again, correct me if I'm wrong. Some people watch a great deal more than I do of NA Valorant so far, but I'd say Gen G are quite a structured team in that regard. Whereas TSM is a little bit more fast and loose. They do have set pieces, sure, but they're a little bit, they'll depend off their individuals a bit more, which is completely viable when you have some incredibly talented individuals, right? So it works both ways, but they're my two kind of different camps of playstyles. I want to see where T1's slotting in on that. I want to see how well they do against, let's say a TSM, or how well they do against a Gen G. So those kind of moments will be pretty decisive. And so yeah, I think Gen G's already confirmed. I'd imagine TSM will be in there as well.
I can't imagine that any team doesn't confirm. Like if T1 for some reason were to dodge the PAX Invitational, it would be you couldn't defend it.
I think they're in.
It's not gonna happen. You have 20 teams invited for sure. Like you don't have 20 good North American teams. Well, good. Of course, there's good teams, but not like the top of the notch, right? Like we're talking about top 5, top 10, and they're inviting 20 teams. So for sure, they got to be like one of those teams that are going to be invited, and that would accept at the same point too. But I think to on your guys' point too, the more you wait, and then you want to show up at T1, it's kind of like a double-edged sword for that organization too. You lose the matchup, you bomb in a tournament. Everybody's gonna be like, you're shit, and then fucking Twitch chat. They always hop on that bandwagon of like these guys are gonna be awful for.
They're always looking for Steam. Yeah, whatever it is.
Exactly. So
it's
hopefully
not your haircut.
Once they show up here for PAX, yeah.
It's not your haircut, it's your lack of a haircut. Let me tell you.
Oh yeah, no, I got hair. Yeah. Maybe
really?
At least your head is nice.
Thank you, dude. Oh, nice, dude. Nice hair. You know what?
Okay,
I would look at
no gel on this too.
You actually look like me wearing a wig. Except your hair is real.
That's awesome.
Except I don't have a wig that'll fit me right. Maybe I'll get some hair like Lauren's. I'll take it back to the 80s and just start flopping it around and stuff like that. That'll be great.
I'll send it over. I'll shave it up.
Well, Do we have any closing thoughts? We actually covered a ton of stuff today, man. I'm actually I'm physically tired from all the yelling. I don't know about you guys, but man, it's been a fun show, and obviously it's been a fun week in Valorant. So I think the PAX Invitational is probably going to be the next book, like the next checkpoint for North American Valorant. And if I had one
100%.
concern, it's that maybe the T1 is in the dojo and they've been, they're like plugged into the matrix and they're feeding all this information. Because if there's one team that I think is in a volatile spot as far as their style and their perceived dominance, it is TSM, because they do play a very fast and loose style, and a set team with high skill, good coaching, and good recon could potentially exploit them. If you're going to drop a 13-1 on Ascent to essentially like a pug team in Cloud9, there's a very good chance that if T1 comes out of the woodwork with some sort of crazy karate that you've never seen before, that they could potentially just upset the whole thing and shove my words back down my throat. So
apparently they will.
Any thought? I hope so, man, because I want to see more of that team. Any thoughts from around the Valorant community, Pansy, that we haven't talked about today?
No, I think you're spot on for me. I think, for me, it's going to be having a deeper look at TSM, how they're playing now. Have they broadened what they can do? Because, again, a lot of their success was based off of a little bit of freedom given over to them by NA being a little bit lax on keeping check on people like Wardell and letting Sabrosa run free. But those two are outstandingly good at what they do. I want to see how teams have approached this. And I do see people saying that they're not a pug style. I think that you need to take into account the bigger scene. If you look at just NA, no, they're pretty much to par. They're pretty much to standard. But I think if you see how they gain a lot of their success, it is through that individual based off the back of it, and then they bounce off it. And that's completely fine. But it is fast and loose, and the utility usage in NA, and even the agent pick in NA, is very different to what we're seeing coming out of EU in that regard. So it's quite easy to be as aggressive as they are when no one's keeping them in check. So I'm wondering if there is going to be a bit of that back and forth when we do see a bit more of a structured team. Keep that in mind. I mean, these guys, again, it takes nothing away from the fact that they find these moments, but the fact is that they do, and they can exploit it, so it plays to their playstyle. I haven't seen them have to go to deeper depths yet, running, very, defaulted out set pieces, kind of falling into these set executions, playing a little bit more map control. These sort of kind of fundamentals that we see kind of more structured teams having to depend on. So I think it'd be really fun to see how well they fare. If they are in the PAX tournament, I want to see obviously T1, how they're looking coming into this. And of course, the rise of the Sentinels. I want to see if they're bringing some unique approaches to it. I think they've again got some very quirky ways of playing. I think that certainly Sinatra is at the forefront of that. But the rest of the team kind of echoes it as well. They've got a really nice, aggressive defensive style that's quite fun to watch. And again, where's Gen G in this one? Do we see them back on the top of things, or are they going to kind of middle out? So yeah, all eyes towards the tournament coming up for me, and see how well that one shakes down and who kind of walks away in the top 3 looking like they've made improvements.
And Silly, aside from the PAX Invitational, is there anything else you're looking forward to? Anything that's bothering you? Any words about the op meta? Anything like that?
No, definitely looking forward to the WePlay, actually getting to learn the European side as well. I'm excited for Ninjas in Pajamas. I'm looking forward to G2 if they're going to continue to assert their dominance. And of course, Fish 123, if it's going to be Team Liquid with Scream. I want to see him. Pansies talks about him a lot. I know him from the CSGO scene. I want to see what he's going to do in the Valorant scene too. So that's going to be a fun one to watch. My eyes are as well on TSM when we're going to move into PAX, because Sabrosa said, look, we already got some new things under our sleeves. So it's going to be nothing but good tournament. So looking forward to the hype. And while we continue to ride the hype of Valorant in the scene, I want to see more organizations come into. I want to see the complexity. I want to see the Na'Vi. I want to see the phase. Like, let's start getting some.
How is Na'Vi not picked up Party Parrots?
Right? So, yeah, that's another thing.
Come
on. Sorry, who hasn't picked up Party Parrots?
Na'Vi.
How's no one picked up Party Parrots? Oh, Na'Vi. Oh, yeah, that would make sense.
How is it not Na'Vi or like Hellraisers or Virtus Pro maybe? Like one of those. It's like, how is that?
Yeah.
It's such an easy look-in, right? Like you look at come on, that's an insta pick. Like I feel like that's just just very surface level.
I don't think that team's done yet. I don't think that team's quite in the right spot yet. From what I saw from them in the last tournament, as sight unseen, never watched them before. They didn't really show, and actually at times exhibited some just questionable decision making and stuff. Now I'm not at their level, so I can't really tell them that they're not good. But I mean, from comparatively to the rest of the tournament, we didn't really see a ton out of those guys that would really. I don't know if they're quite ready yet. I think they need to make some changes, either strategically or maybe roster wise.
I think look back at their previous results, and
Angel and Shao played great,
but
I mean,
you watched.
Okay.
Yeah, again, it's like for me, their consistence seemed to end at that tournament. So I'm still going to stand by Party Parrots for a while. I think one bad tournament is not a good look, but it's not a problem for me yet. I think let's go. Okay, they finally met a good couple of teams. Let's see if they can bounce back. Let's see if they can now push through. So that's the big one for me.
Yeah. So they do have some notable victories. They did come in third, fourth. I'm not saying that the team's bad by any stretch. But Angel, their IGL, from what I understand, was also their top fragger, which is either an anomaly for the good or potentially a sign of the bad. But like, I mean, from what we saw from Artist was a bit streaky. SSK had some moments. Dinks, like, same thing there. Like, they all had decent performances, but really Angel and Shao were the heart and soul of that team from what I was able to observe from them in the games I was able to see. So maybe there's some changes to be made there style wise, or it's just a one-off, and they're actually the CIS gods that sometimes these teams will turn into. But that, I think, is going to bring us to the end. So let's talk again a little bit about the MSPaint contest. Don't forget that. Check out our Twitter at DNPeak, I should say. Make sure you're entering that. You can get yourself a potential Amazon gift card if you come up with a better idea than we did with our agent contest. Vansilli, I expect to see your homework on my desk by tomorrow morning. Coming soon. And don't forget also to follow us on our socials on Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube at Do Not Peak Entertainment, on YouTube specifically. And you can follow us here, what you're doing already. So thank you for watching. Shout out to Pansy and Vansilli for hanging out with me. It was a high energy show, a lot of yelling, a lot of concerns, but hopefully we can figure out our differences. I like to yell. My volume knob is cranked to 11 at all times. So thank you for being tremendous guests. Pansy, we'll see you next week. Vansilli, we hope to see you real soon. And thank you guys for watching. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you next week. Have a great week, everybody.
Thanks, guys.